Hi, Steve Stahlberg here with monthly painting video number 56, made in Kuala Lumpur, August 2018. This is another non-traditional pinup, meaning it's not a close-up of a woman in a sexy pose. It's inspired by this photo from a movie called A Little Princess from 1995, specifically the light and the way the figure stands on a large ruined object that's normally isn't used for standing on, this Buddha head here, and also kind of inspired by the rounded surface. Well, basically, I mean, that's what shows that it's not normally used to stand on, that it's round, because humans need flat surfaces to stand on. So anyway, I thought something large and rounded, maybe an atomic submarine far in the future when its oceans are gone, resting on top of some buildings. I googled submarines and found this Akula class Russian atomic submarine. Akula means shark in Russian. It's an attack submarine and doesn't have missiles, but I imagined it did in my world, as you'll see later. I just found that bulb at the stern so interesting, the towed sonar array here. I wanted it in my design. I wanted it up close in front. So I kind of knew what angle I wanted. So these complex shapes are extremely difficult to sketch without aid. I did try. You'll see that sketch later. My preliminary sketches. So I chose to build the submarine in 3D first. So I loaded this blueprint in Maya. Two equal planes, careful not to introduce stretching or deformation in them. It's basically the same image mapped twice on two different planes, 90 degrees to each other. And so this is a view from the perspective window, but of course I modeled in the orthographic windows mostly. It's a cylinder basically. You can see, starting with the cylinder, copied the cylinder to make that shape, copied the cylinder to make that shape, and these little cylinders also, you know. Even this little wing here, the plane, the dive plane, I think that started as a cylinder. You know, it's just the quickest way to do this, because it doesn't have to be clean and neat. It just has to look good from the one point of view that you're going to introduce. So this is the sky dome, and I slapped a very simple texture on it. You can see there. These are the orthographic views. Yeah, I love Maya. I've been using Maya for like 20 years or more. See this dive plane here? It is only actually finished on one side because I knew I wasn't going to see this side on the right hand side here. And some details here at the back that I introduced. And here's the first rendering, or one of the first renderings. I introduced, first we have the main light here, which is important, which was taken from the original movie shot that I showed you in the beginning. And then we have some bounce light here. I'm not sure exactly what it's bouncing off. I just introduced a warm bounce light. I'm not sure why I chose warm, because this one is also warm. I guess this one is warmer. You know, you don't want them to be exactly the same color. So I thought it would go well with the reddish paint here. Like if I'd chosen green, you see how everything else is green here. So there is a bit of a green tint to everything here and here, and kind of bluish light here. So yeah, warm light here. And also plays well with the kind of bronze feeling of the propeller, which by the way is 7 blades and not 6. I just thought 7 looked cooler. And yeah, this is Arnold, the Arnold renderer in Maya. And this is just another render I did to kind of for a dirt layer, you know, to play with a couple of different passes to paste on top of each other in Photoshop. This is the sequence of pre-production. Here's the very first sketch I made, and you can see it's kind of horrible in perspective. It's really bad. This is why I chose to work it out in 3D. And I'm changing it here. This is another stage. I'm editing it. I'm trying to make it more like what I want, but in the end this was all just leading up to the 3D part. Although it was good to have this. It was good to have these sketches when I started the 3D, because then I knew here's the 3D now introduced. Then I knew exactly what angle I was going for, and the lighting, and you know, it just helps a lot. And the next stage will be starting the not sketching in this case. There's no need for any more sketching now. The sketching has been done, but tracing. I have to trace my own. This is called 3D bashing, and as opposed to photo bashing. So I'm kind of bashing my own 3D artwork here. But right now just tracing the outline of it to have clean edges. And I am separating these shapes on a couple of layers. You can see here there's one layer and another and a third. So I think we have 3 layers here. The main hull and these periscopes are on one layer, and then this is another layer, and this all serves for me to be able to paint. I can paint on the hull here without being scared of demolishing this dive plane here or the propeller. I can keep all these sharp edges permanently sharp. And of course this is similar to having layer masks, but I just like this method, much more intuitive to me. It's split up on 3 normal layers instead of having these little extra weird things that don't really show up unless you click them or right click them or do yeah, you know what I mean. You can actually see them as little thumbnails in Photoshop in the stack. Maybe we can see them later. But here I'm switching them on and off just to show how they work. And yeah, it makes it easier to pick which layer you want to work on. You can instantly see which layer is the one that you need. When you look here, you can see this little thumbnail icon here. Right at the bottom here is the 3D render, which I still have there. And so we start the painting. I think, yes, I'm introducing the waterline here. That's the waterline. It's a blackish color here, white there, red here, but of course it's aged a lot, so it's going to be faded, and it's all going to have a green cast to it because it's kind of a greenish golden light somehow. It's very strange, but it's basically inspired by that movie still that you saw. And I'm airbrushing some light here, which is very easy because I have these layers that I mentioned. And I'm following the 3D render when I'm doing this. I'm using it as a reference. Later I will be grabbing some texture bits from it and applying, you know. And also later I will also I'm making bounce light here. Now this bounce light is bluish. It's not quite logical there. It should have been warm, reddish, orangish, but yeah, it's I thought this just played better here because we're gonna have some orangey, warm shaft of light happening in the background here. Yeah, I'll be adding some extra texture that wasn't even in the original 3D render later. This isn't super high resolution. It could have been, but I don't do any of the 2700 pixels vertical is the resolution I'd make these in. It's just a habit that's stuck with me. Using fade there, the tool that I often use in these situations. When I have subtle gradations happening and they're not quite right, I like to use the airbrush a bit heavy-handedly and then fade it, and then apply, fade, apply, fade. Here's the propeller coming in, and I have this notion that the propeller was originally bronze or covered in some kind of metal that was bronzy in color. I'm not sure. That could have been a mistake. I've neglected to research that enough, and anyway, I just think it looks cool. Metallic sheen with some of the bounce light bouncing around, and you know, the bounce light has more of an effect on slightly shiny metallic surfaces like this, so you'll see that later. I'll enhance that on the propeller later. So here's the background coming in with that golden shaft of light that I was talking about. And I'm using my original sketch, my preliminary sketch, as a reference here. And I'm going to be painting some buildings which the submarine is propped up on, resting on. The thought was to have them be really tall buildings, ruins of tall buildings, but that doesn't come across really very well in the final, but there is another version of this image where I think that comes across more clearly. I'll show you later. And there's a main character there. It has wings. I'm not sure why. I just thought of how did that character get there, you know? How does it get up there? And I did experiment with having like ladders and things stuck to the submarine, but here I'm refining the periscope array. Yeah, the ladders didn't do it for me. I don't know. So I thought, well, maybe in the far, far future, you know, humans have evolved to have wings. It's a bit cliche, perhaps, but I thought it's kind of nice. This submarine, it's a kind of a nice juxtaposition with the submarine who is designed to plunge down, and then you have this winged creature who is inherited the skies, and it's sitting on top there of this ruined submarine. I don't know. That's the thought process anyway behind it. Just explaining to you guys what goes through my head when I'm making these things. Yeah, refining the dive plane, the bow dive plane. And next I will be going to the stern planes. Jump a little bit, yeah. Adjusting stuff there. It's adding some texture. Oh yeah, and I figure there's a little recess there for it to be folded back in. I think, I'm not sure. I haven't had time to research. Like, ideal would have been to buy a plastic model or something and build it, you know. But I have to produce one of these a month, so yeah, that's not gonna happen. Now this part here is fairly clear in the reference, a couple of reference photos that I did find, so it should be fairly accurate, I hope. Basically they work like aeroplanes, except that they don't provide lift. They don't need to provide lift. The lift is provided by the submarine's you know, ballast, reducing or increasing ballast, or blowing compressed air out or in. I'm not exactly sure how it does it, but I know it's not these planes that provide the lift like it does on an airplane. They're symmetrical, I think. The top surface is curved exactly the same way as the bottom surface, so as not to provide lift, because that would, you know, seriously disturb the navigation of the submarine. Working on these propeller blades here now, which again, as I said before, is quite easy when you have this whole thing just neatly separated into its own layer, and the transparency is locked. And here you can see I'm working with the bounce light, like I mentioned before. Sort of balancing act between providing texture and an overall lightening, fading there a bit. Fade works great with texture application like this. You can go crazy with your texture. You got to keep it in one stroke though. The fade only works on single strokes, so you make it a long stroke, a long connected stroke, and then you fade, and then you do another one, and build it up gradually like that. But of course there are other ways to add texture, which you can use a texture brush and lay it down. You can do it on a layer and then fade the layer in and out, which you'll see I'll do later. Here I'm using a texture brush to add spots like this also, you see. Adding these little details on the side of the hull. Again, I'm not sure about the structure here. I don't know how deeply these are recessed, but I do know that the Aquila has two hulls. It has another hull inside, which is the actual pressure hull. This outer hull is probably, that's where these windows are, just penetrating the outer hull, which is you know, thinner, flimsier, not meant to take any pressure, just existing for probably for noise reduction and for improving hydrodynamics, the flow of the water around the thing. Adding texture, dirt. Now, next I'm going to be starting on the main character, which was really difficult. I made several attempts at it, like 3 or 4, I can't remember exactly. Not only are humans notoriously hard, this pose is also notoriously hard. It's just kind of a bland side view standing pose, and it's very difficult to make it look I don't know, natural and actually aesthetically pleasing. And you can see the first shape that is here now is just basically a completely crappy stand-in placeholder. So yeah, it's a female, of course. I always do females. This was nominally supposed to be a pin-up after all, but yeah, also wings are really difficult to do. So this first attempt at wings and the pose is not really good. I'd already done another one on the preliminary sketch, which was actually better looking than this one is so far. But none of these two would be used in the end. I did a complete redo of this, which you'll see in a moment. Yeah, you see the bounce light here and the main light here. And so here's the redo. And I'm happier with it. It's not wonderfully great. I'm not really that happy, but I'm happier than I am with this here, so I'm gonna use this one. Now later I did compress these wings inwards in this direction, making them slimmer in the horizontal direction. And I removed this part here, which is realistic and naturalistic, but it just bugged me aesthetically. You'll see. Right now I'm working on selecting it, and then I transfer the... Oh, not yet. Okay, I'm drawing the other wing right there. Because I don't even have that here. I haven't even gotten that far. I gave up on this one before I started doing the far leg and the far wing, but here I have those. The far arm is not necessary to do, because that would rarely... In a relaxed pose, you would be highly likely that one of the arms would be not seen at all, or just tiny bit. Okay, shading on the wings. I guess we can jump a bit. Next, what I did is just, as I always do, a selection. More shading. Yeah. I'm repurposing the original one because I had all the colors there. The colors were right, you know. So I wanted to keep those. I hate doing stuff all over from scratch if I don't have to, you know. See, I put that little thing there, but I didn't like it. Later I removed it. Yeah, I tried to do a graceful long-legged creature, like perhaps humanity has evolved to this, or it could be some kind of alien. I don't know. Just sort of flying around. Later I added a friend up there in the sky, which we can imagine she's kind of looking sort of towards her friend up there in the sky, but more in the distance. But they're just flying around here, investigating the remains of the apocalypse, or whatever you could call this. So yeah, this one is nearly finished. I'm going to add a shadow here, cast shadow. And then I'm going to add some more texture to the submarine. So here's a texture. This is taken from the original one that I mentioned earlier that I slapped on the 3D model. Just cropped out a bit of the part that I had already made and processed a bit, you know, grayscale, raised contrast, sharpened it a bit. And this is how you can use warp to fit any texture to any object. And then on its own layer, overlay. And then later, of course, right now I'm working with full opacity, but I reduce the opacity later, erasing the parts that stick out, and the illusion is complete. And this is the finished version right here, and you can see I did some more stuff similar to what I just did there. I applied that same thing here, down here. I specifically made these panels. I selected them, you know, manually, like one by one, area by area, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a few here, and then added a few lines, a few darker lines between, or not even between the selections, but yeah, sorry, let me go back. And it doesn't have to even be specifically placed. You just sort of put one Like when you do bricks, you just put a couple randomly, haphazardly, and they kind of give the illusion that there is more there than there is. And then the missile hatch, which I mentioned, Akulas don't carry missiles, from what I understand. So it's a bit weird, but I wanted it to look post-apocalyptic, like it used one of the missiles, or alternatively, some warring faction has extracted the missile after this submarine was washed up on the shore, and used it in a war or something. You know, here's the other angelic character flying around up there. Yeah, that's it. Hope you like it. Let me know if you have any feedback or questions. Thanks for your support, and see you next month.